beautiful Karnamalan Buddhist here, murti that I wanted to show you. Oh, look at this. There. Look at the Rahans on Karnamalan on that one. So if you understand that this is Hari, and you understand that this is Hari, because that's what the Pure Land Buddhists call him, he's Hari, then you understand it's the same icon.
It's Chiro.
Huh?
The Chiro.
Right, right. It's the same deity. Okay, so I don't know. I finished on the Pata,
Yep.
Fat, Fiat. So the line of connections, I try to track the individual cultus of devotion as much as possible. So if you look at the name and form of the lion-headed form of the Lord, what are the primary associations? Time and eternity. And often the wrathful form of the Lord is time. And he's the patron of armies. He's the patron of Kshatriyas and of rulers and protectors. And significantly, he's the protector of women in childbirth. He's the protector of orphans and children and all the helpless. And he's the protector of the unborn. He's protector of pregnant women. He's protector of women that are abused. Isn't this amazing? So the temples of the lion-headed form of God in Egypt were sanctuaries for pregnant women and women in childbirth and abused and abandoned women and widows. Isn't that amazing? And helpless. So the lion-headed form of the Lord in the Exodus, that's also the form of the Lord that's associated with the destruction of the Canaanites. So people get this, oh, this terrible, wrathful, evil deity of the Old Testament. He wiped out whole peoples. He destroyed the Canaanites. He gave instructions to Joshua that if they didn't make peace, kill them all. You know, this must be the origin of Muslim jihadi, all this kind of stuff. They don't understand the background of the whole situation. And this gets into my understanding of what happened with the Hyksos invasion of Egypt and the change after so many centuries of the capital of Egypt from a Helios worshipping capital to Tanis. The capital of the Hyksos was Set worshipping, Ketu, Rahu Ketu worshipping. So it wasn't that the Hyksos were Semites, because the devotees included Semites and Africans and Indo-Europeans. The thing was that the Hyksos were the Rahu Ketu worshippers. And it would have been under the Rahu Ketu worshippers that the devotees of the one true God were enslaved. And it would have been under the dominance of a Rahu Ketu worshipping pharaoh, or a corrupted so-called Helios worshipping pharaoh, that the Exodus story occurred. Because it was a mixed multitude of Helios worshippers that were driven out of Egypt, or that left Egypt. And that's very clear from the internal information in the story itself. Now, who is the main theophany, or what is the main theophany of the Exodus story? It's the wrathful form of the Lord, Yahu Sabaoth, who is the great I Am. And he comes and asserts himself. How? He asserts himself in this I Am revelation. What is this? This is the personal God stepping into history in a very miraculous way, asserting against what? What's he asserting against? He's asserting against a corruption that says that he isn't. And so what is that assertion? The setting of the Bhagavad Gita is we have a people in an age of the world when previously everybody's been worshiping the one Lord. And now a corruption has arisen in which it's turned everyone. There's an alliance against the Pandavas and the family of Krishna, and these people have turned against God. They have a form of God, they have a name of God, but they're corrupt, and they've had their choice. And do you know the story of the Mahabharata? Well, Krishna went around. He personally went around and tried to broker peace. And then he gave everybody the same choice. He says, you can have me, or you can have every alliance with all the other kings of the world. But if you have me, I'm not going to fight on your side, because I'm actually equal to everybody. But I will. I'll drive your. He agreed to drive Arjuna's chariot. But I'll give you instruction. And if you stay with me, you'll be victorious. So the Bhagavad Gita can be read on many different levels. It can be read as a personal struggle. But anyway, so the fateful day comes to pass, and the Pandavas and the family of Krishna, they're arrayed on one side. And the Pandavas, they've been forced into hiding. And they've been in what? So they've been in diaspora. They've been spread out, different places hiding, and they've taken positions of service. And as a matter of fact, Arjuna has spent a time as Brihanala, as a transgendered teacher of women in a pious king's household. During this long period of exile, the Pandavas have taken all different positions of servitude. But now, its time has come. They've come back. They're supposed to take their rightful place to take over the kingdom. And the Kurus said, "We won't give you enough land that'll fit in the hoofprint of a calf. We are not going to surrender anything to Yudhisthira. He's not the heir. We're not going to let you have your land back." So there's going to be a big war, and everybody's chosen their side, and the Kurus have chosen the powers of the world, and the Pandavas and the family of Krishna, they're just sticking with Krishna. And so before the great battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna has come to get Arjuna. You see his quadriga? He's driving the 4-horse chariot here. This is not the sun god who goes across the sky, and he's got a servant who drives his chariot, and also often has 7 horses on it. In ancient Jewish synagogues and temples, and on Jewish coins, which I'm going to show you, Jewish amulets, and in Bactrian coinage, Greek era coinage from northwest India, you have Krishna's Parthasarathi, meaning the driver of Partha, of Arjuna's chariot. But interestingly enough, these coins and these mosaics in Jewish temples, they have the Lord depicted coming directly at you, and there's no Arjuna in the chariot. So now think about the meditative practice. Think about in the Rosary, when we begin with the Hail Mary, the words of Gabriel to Mary. And this invokes in us the response of Mary, the yes, which is the opening to God. Krishna says, I won't fight, but I will give you instruction and I will drive your chariot. So, he's saying that to us. So, when is Arjuna not in the chariot? When Krishna's coming to pick him up. So my understanding of the icon in which Helios, Koros, or Krishna, the Parthasarthi type of Helios Quadrigos icon, where there's no passenger, is that this is the theological interpretation of, right now he's coming to pick you up. He's the God of the present moment. That's why they're in these various icons that I'm going to show you that depict past, present, and future. He's always right in the present. And the present, he's facing directly at you because he's actually communicating right now. Emmanuel, God with you, right now in the present moment, in this medium, within your sense perception. So, if you turn Krishna a little bit in this picture, and Arjuna wasn't in the chariot, you would have the same icon that is in the ancient Jewish places of worship. That he's coming straight at you. Why? He's coming to pick you up. He's right now in the present moment, the Lord of the past, present, and the future. Presence with you. So, Krishna has picked up Arjuna, and he drives him out into the middle of this battlefield between the forces of the world, the false gods of the world, anybody but Krishna, and the few faithful. And the faithful who have been in exile, who have been in servitude, and so forth. And he stops everything, suspends everything. And because they're going to have this dialogue of the Bhagavad Gita. So I think there's a picture in here of our Krishna and Arjuna drawn up. There it is, between the opposing sides in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So everything's suspended. And during that moment, which is like an eternity, but during that moment of suspension, Krishna and Arjuna have this dialogue. And at the end of this dialogue, the last verse of Arjuna to Krishna is, I can't quote it exactly, but now I'm free of doubt and fear and prepared to act according to your will. So, in this discourse, there's a central theophany where Krishna reveals his universal form to Arjuna. And the form that he reveals is the wrathful form. Now, they have not depicted it like this. If they depicted it like this in the Bhagavad Gita, in Prabhupada's books, people would have understood a lot better and more clearly. But if you want to understand that this wrathful form of Krishna, that is actually the central theophany of the Bhagavad Gita, is Nrsimhadev, is the lion-headed form of time. All you have to do is when you read the text, and Arjuna says, O Lord of Lords, so fierce of form, please tell me who you are. And the Lord replies, Time I am, close me, destroyer of the worlds, I've come to claim all people. Kalaha, significantly, is the name of the lion-headed form of Krishna and a name of Shiva. This is how the Shaivites can own the Bhagavad Gita. They say that's our scripture. Because obviously Krishna is an incarnation of Shiva, because when he reveals his universal form to Arjuna, he calls himself Kalaha, and Kalaha is the name of Shiva. Matter of fact, to the Buddhists, you might know him as Kala Bhairava, the horrific or terrible form of Kalaha. Kala Bhairava, they say Bhairava, and the Tibetan Buddhists say Bhairava, not Bhairav. But so Krishna says, Time I am, close me. Now, if we go to Bali or we go any place in Indonesia or any place where they have ancient festivals, when they have the not Gita Jayanti, but they have various Gita-related festivals. When they have those Gita-related festivals where they tell the story of the Gita in public plays, like passion plays, they which besides icons was much the way that the ancient scriptures were transmitted, which was by theater, which is why you have these huge theaters, the Asclepia Day, the temples and the orders of the worshippers of Asclepius. They always built these gigantic university centers, which included huge theaters, which if you can see them today. They're so stupendously beautiful. I've got some pictures of them on my Facebook pages, some of the great theaters at the centers of Asclepius worship. But anyway, when you go and see these plays or these puppet plays or any of these kind of enactments of the story of the Bhagavad Gita, when it comes to the universal form, the display of Krishna's wrathful form as Kala, you get into the Buddhist icons of the multiple heads, sometimes like 11 heads, and they'll be semi-leonid, or they'll be very obviously lion-headed. So there's a remembrance amongst the Buddhists and also Vaishnavas and others throughout the range of these traditions that this wrathful form of the Lord in the Gita is of Kala, or Kala Bhairava, is lion-headed. So, what's the significance here? Well, if we go over to, so then he speaks, then he delivers his great I am verses. And Krishna, Arjuna says, tell me who you are, and he says, close me, time I am, destroyer of the worlds. Then he goes on and he explains all through these great I am verses. I'm Shiva, I'm Skandu, I'm Kubera, I'm all, and he explains everyone that is worshiping all these so-called gods, all that worship is going to me. These are all forms of mine, and it's just like he's reviving, just like the scripture says. From time to time, he comes and he reminds people, and when the true faith has fallen away and become degraded and corrupted, the Lord comes again himself, or sends his devotee to clarify everything again. So this is astonishing. When he gives these great I am verses here, he names all these devas, which in the Vedic hymns, all of these devas that he names are born from the sacrificed body of Purusha, of Vishnu. So all the devas are what they might say powers, attributes. They're individual, but they're more than that. They're personal forms of the Lord that preside over various powers and universal powers and abstracts and so many different things. But they cannot be separated from Purusha, who is their origin. They can't be separated from Krishna. So Krishna describes in here worship or religion in the three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And it's described that worship of the devas, now not separate from God, but appropriate Vedic worship of the devas, like as we go through the Vedic hymns, and Surya and Varuna might be hymned, or Indra. When those hymns sing the praises of Varuna as supreme, for instance, it's because it's just the Varuna name. The Varuna, I've told you, show these, they're worshiping Krishna, they're worshiping Vishnu or Purusha in the form and the name under Anamarupa of Varuna. That's all it is. It's all Vishnu. All the Vedas are not the record of a polytheistic people. They're worshiping the same Lord under all these different names and form. So Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita reasserts that this is the true faith. Now, if we go to the Saddharma Pundarika, there are verses in there where it's revealed that Avalokiteshvara descends into the Saha world and appears as Kubera, Skanda, Shiva, Mahadev, using exactly the same Vedic Vaishnava Sanskrit language in the Saddharma Pundarika, which is essential Pure Land Buddhist text, in which it's described that when Avalokiteshvara comes to the Saha world to save souls, he appears in all these forms. And the exact same revelation is given as in Krishna speaks it himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, there's no evidence that the Pure Land Buddhist tradition is not a plagiarization, but is a borrowing from the Bhagavad Gita. And there's no evidence that the Bhagavad Gita is a borrowing from the Pure Land Buddhist tradition. But people are going to try to say, like the Buddhists say, no, we don't worship Vishnu. Avalokiteshvara is not Vishnu, because they have little sectarian myths that try to explain how Avalokiteshvara is superior to Vishnu. These are later stories, right? Because they're sectarian, because they don't want, just like when I was in Nepal, I would see the same devotees worshiping at the Buddhist stupas and Buddhist monuments and holy places, that I'd see them worshiping at a Vishnu temple or a Shiva temple. But when I went to the Buddhist authorities, and when I went to the icon makers, Prabhu, it was amazing. I'd say, can you make me or can I order, or do you make Vishnu, this form of Vishnu, that form of Vishnu, this other form of Vishnu? No, we only make the Avalokiteshvara and the forms of Avalokiteshvara, but you can buy them anyway because they're identical to the forms of Vishnu. And I said, well, yes, I understand that, but do you make Vishnu? No, we just make the one because it's the identical, it's the same deity. So the Murti makers all know it's the same deity, right? So that when I go to the Buddhist authorities, the Buddhists say, no, we don't worship Vishnu. Vishnu is a Hindu god. No, we worship Avalokiteshvara. The Hindus have gotten everything from us. So the Narasimha Lokeshvar, it's lion-headed, there's Nrsingadev, or Vajra Varahi, the diamond sow, and Baraha, hog form of Lokeshvar, or the Nilakanta Lokeshvar, or Hayagriva Lokeshvar, and Makindranath, and on Matsya, the Matsya peak in the Himalayas. What's that about? The fish form of Lokeshvar. I said, whoa, these are all forms of Vishnu. No, we don't worship Vishnu. The Hindus must have gotten it from us. Okay, so you have this extreme sectarian defensiveness, and they have created, and the Shaivites have the same thing, created a whole mythology around trying to be triumphalist of our tradition, and that it's a reactionary movement, and these are reactionary myths, is obvious because the other existed before, and they have to come after it and try to create something for an excuse of why, just like the Theravadan Buddhists down in Sri Lanka. I was up to here with excuses from them why all of the most ancient Buddhist sites in Sri Lanka have got Jai and Vijay, Vishnu's gatekeepers, right there before you enter the stupa. And Diwali's little shrines attached showing Vishnu incarnating as Buddha. And why the common masses of so-called atheistic Theravadan Buddhists in Sri Lanka on Vesak, thrice holy day of Vesak, they're all reciting Mahayana, Pure Land Buddha birth stories. The whole place is pervaded from its most ancient roots with Pure Land Buddhism, in the world capital of Theravadan Buddhism. And right there in the temples on Vesak, they're reciting Buddha's birth stories, which have nothing to do with Theravadan Buddhism. So I asked the authorities, the leaders, just like I asked at the places in Nepal. I said, why are you putting up with all this, all this Hindu influenced, all this? Because, those people, there's many lives. They're so ignorant. They're influenced with Hinduism, hardly anybody can understand the esoteric doctrines of Anatta, the true Buddhism. And I also noted that these pathetic, corrupt lay people were making very, very generous donations. If it wasn't for the donations of the lay masses, these people would have no support. But that's like what goes on in Hinduism. You have Advaitis who do not believe in any personal Shiva, any personal God at all. These Brahmins, caste Brahmins, are very racist and they're very elitist, and they run these temples and they accept the donations of the masses, and the masses are bhaktas, you know. To them Shiva is real and Devi is real, and they're practicing a form of bhakti yoga, but their leaders are atheists, and the leaders are supported by the donations of the lay masses, who they have nothing but disdain for. They have contempt for the people that are supporting them. Arrogant, elitist, impersonalist, Mayavadi, nihilistic contempt. So, there's an element of that towards the Bhakti tradition of Vaishnavism, towards these ancient traditions. It's not just something that modern Western scholars have for people of simple faith, simple childlike incarnational theistic faith, but it's something that's shared by this elite class of impersonalist Brahmins or pujaris or priests or religious leaders all over the planet. You know, it's a pathology. So anyway, so back to this story. So now you have Krishna driving Arjuna's chariot. He's drawn the chariot up between the two opposing forces, and I've already said that the central theophany is of Kalaha. Now you might be aware of a story of Shiva, where Shiva appears as a pillar of flame. Well, there's something called Jyotilinga, tongue of flame. Linga is usually up in the West. At Tantras, people are thinking of Tantras, they think of linga as a phallic, symbol.
Rama and Vishnu try to find the end of it?
Yeah. That's one version, right? But Shiva has different manifestations as this tongue of flame, this pillar of flame, cosmic, as tall as the universe, pillar of flame. So now remember, Kalaha isn't time, is the name of Shiva, and the column of flame is a form of Shiva. Now think about the story of the Exodus. You have an army of the Pharaoh pursuing a vast multitude, a mixed multitude of worshippers of Heru, of Helios. And they've in this pursuit, they've come very close.